Red alert, anyone? And this also comes at exactly the same moment that his son faces possible felony charges. And also, needless to say, at the moment that his dementia has become so obvious that no one can possibly deny it. I'm in Israel to honor the Holocaust, he just said. It's so awful. So what does this mean? Well, this incites the blood instincts of others in his party. Gretchen Whitmer, probably sitting in her rec room right now, polishing her resume. I could replace him. But he's sick with COVID after getting multiple shots. What is that about exactly? How did that happen? It's easy to just mock that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's clearly untrue. But is there a connection between getting multiple COVID vax shots and getting sicker? Is it possible that the vaccine actually can hurt you, especially if you keep getting boosted? Can it weaken your immune system? Well, that looks possible. Multiple studies have looked into this. Just last month, the Journal of Food and Chemical Toxicology published the findings of several mRNA researchers, and we're quoting, "In this paper, we present evidence that vaccination induces a profound impairment in type 1 interferon signaling, which has diverse adverse consequences to human health." Well, that seems like a headline. Did you read that in the New York Times? No, you probably didn't. Kind of weird, since hundreds of people got the shot. The researchers continued that in their studies of the COVID vaccine, quote, "We identified potential profound disturbances in regulatory control of protein synthesis and cancer. Disturbances potentially have a causal link to neurodegenerative disease, myocarditis, Bell's palsy, liver disease, impaired adaptive immunity, impaired DNA damage response, etc." So it's possible, in fact, it's looking likely that the vaccine might suppress the immune system. This fact, the authors concluded, will, quote, "have a wide range of consequences, not the least of which include the reactivation of latent viral infections and the effectively combat future infections," end quote. Now, again, we sincerely hope that's not true. But it's not just the conclusion of one scientific journal. The Lancet, maybe the most famous scientific journal in the world, released similar. The Lancet's piece was entitled, quote, "Risk of infection, hospitalization, and death up to 9 months after a second dose of COVID-19 vaccine." A physician called Kenji Yamamoto made this observation about the data from the Lancet. He wrote this in a letter to the Journal of Virology, and we're quoting, "The study showed that immune function among vaccinated individuals 8 months after the administration of 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine was lower than that among the unvaccinated individuals." Now, your first response, if you're a humane person, to a line like that has got to be deep sympathy. Because people were misled. They were forced. Medical ethics thrown out the window. Take medicine they didn't want. And some of them may have been hurt by it. And you don't have to take this man's like that. We can't say. But if you look at table 3 in the piece, here's what you'll find buried in the data. Among people around the age of 80 who have been double vaccinated, that would include people like Joe Biden, the per capita rate of medical incidences, including hospitalizations or death, is nearly twice as high as the rate of serious incidents for the unvaccinated. This is 180 days after vaccination. What is that? Vaccine efficacy for all ages after 8 months for all participants in the study. So, again, this is sad news for a lot of Americans. Profound indictment, maybe the greatest indictment in our lifetimes of our leaders. Their recklessness, their pig-headedness, their dishonesty. Given this, how is the DC government, among many others, still requiring school children, public and private school children, to get a COVID vaccine? That's a question that no one asked at today's White House press briefing. How are members of the U.S. military being dismissed without their pensions because they won't take this same vaccine in light of these study results? Is no one paying attention? How is this allowed? But instead, today at the White House briefing, all the questions are about the proof of life video that Joe Biden's office released today. Here it is.
Hey, folks, guess you heard this morning I tested positive for COVID. But I've been double vaccinated, double boosted. Symptoms are mild. And I really appreciate your inquiry and your concerns. Get a lot of work done.
here's a question. Is there a single public statement Joe Biden has made since Inauguration Day that he did not read off a teleprompter? Is there one? Find it. So the question that came up in today's press briefing was, after seeing that, is who shot that footage? Is that person in danger? Well, once again, the president's glass ceiling shattering publicist, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked that question. And she said it's totally fine because the video was taken outside. And there's no risk outside that we will arrest you for paddleboarding in California. But then an hour earlier, to make this even messier, because it's inherently messy, because it's Biden related, the White House released this picture. And it shows Joe Biden, brace yourselves, indoors at his desk, no mask. So who shot that picture? Is that person still alive? Does that person have monkeypox? Presumably the White House photographer is vaccinated. That's got to be a requirement working there. But as we just saw, that make the photographer more vulnerable to infection. And in fact, and we hate to say this, it might mean the photographer is now more likely to face serious health complications. Underlying all of this is a really ominous fact, and that is a lot of people have been hurt by this. You hate to say it. Germany's Ministry of Health found that 1 in 5,000 Germans have suffered, quote, serious side effects after a COVID-19 vaccine. What worries me in all of this is not necessarily what the results are of these studies, though they seem kind of scary, but the fact that no one in charge of our public health systems is talking about it, apologizing for statements they made that were wrong. There's no accountability. I just feel like no one's going to ever trust doctors again after this. Are you worried about that?
Well, I'm worried about the credibility of institutions, about Congress people even. Nobody has been forthcoming and talking honestly about any of this.
Our whole system, I never thought about this until the last 2 years, but it's built on trust, and everybody trusts their doctor. I always have. Everybody does. People love doctors. Doesn't the medical establishment understand that their credibility is at stake, and that's kind of existential for them and for all of us?
Well, the problem is that doctors are more afraid of what happens if they go outside the permitted messaging than just hiding behind going along to get along, go outside the permitted messaging than just hiding behind going along to get along, and unwilling to stand up to the message.
You are one of the few who's had heterodox views on this and has said so publicly.
We're running out of time.